Imagine a world where nothing stays the same, where the things you believe in are just tricks your mind plays on you. Welcome to the philosophy of Friedrich Nietzsche, a place where comfort is the enemy, and the only thing you can be sure of is uncertainty. In Beyond Good and Evil, Nietzsche breaks down the walls of traditional ideas about right and wrong, religion, and philosophy. He urges us to think beyond simple labels like good and evil, and to find our own way in the wildness of life, free from what society expects of us. But here's the challenge. Nietzsche's writing can feel like a thick forest, full of tricky ideas and tough to get through. That's why I've reimagined his work in a way that's easier to understand, made for today's thinkers. This version brings Nietzsche's bold ideas into modern language, cutting through the old words but keeping the powerful questions that have inspired rebels and free spirits for years. Are you ready to dive into deep thoughts where every belief is questioned and nothing comes easy? If so, this video will help you explore Nietzsche's wild and thought-provoking philosophy. Get ready. There are no simple answers here, just the push to think, ask questions, and redefine what you believe. If you're excited to join me on this journey, don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment. Let's explore these ideas together. Preface. Imagine if truth were a woman. What then? Wouldn't it make you wonder if all philosophers, especially the dogmatic ones, have completely misunderstood her? The seriousness, the awkwardness, the almost desperate way they've tried to win her over. Could it be that these methods were clumsy and inappropriate for winning a woman's favor? After all, truth has never really allowed herself to be won over by them. Today, every kind of dogma stands there looking sad and defeated, if it stands at all. There are even those who claim that dogma has collapsed completely, that it's lying on the ground, gasping its last breath. But, to be serious for a moment, there are good reasons to think that all the dogmatic thinking in philosophy, no matter how solemn, conclusive, or decisive it has pretended to be, has been nothing more than a kind of noble childishness or naivete. Perhaps the time is coming when we will finally understand what really formed the foundation of those grand and imposing philosophical systems that dogmatists have built up over the ages. Maybe it was nothing more than an old superstition, like the belief in the soul, which, even in the form of ideas about the self and ego, is still causing trouble. Or maybe it was just a play on words, a trick of grammar, or a bold generalization based on a few narrow, personal, all-too-human experiences. Dogmatic philosophy, we might hope, was just a promise, an early, crude version of something more mature that might come thousands of years later, just as astrology once served a purpose long before actual science took its place. Think about it. More effort, gold, cleverness, and patience have probably gone into astrology, with its lofty supernatural claims in places like Asia and Egypt, than into any real science up until now. We owe to astrology the grand styles of architecture that tried to capture those super-terrestrial ambitions. It seems that to make a lasting impression on humanity, all great things first have to roam the earth as giant, awe-inspiring caricatures. Dogmatic philosophy has been one such caricature. Think of the Vedanta philosophy in Asia or Platonism in Europe. Let's not be too ungrateful to these systems, even though it's fair to admit that the worst, most tiresome, and most dangerous error so far has been a dogmatic one, namely Plato's invention of pure spirit and the good in itself. But now that we have moved beyond this, now that Europe, free from this nightmare, can finally breathe easier and perhaps enjoy a healthier sleep, we who are committed to staying awake inherit all the strength that has come from fighting against this error. Plato's ideas were essentially an inversion of truth, a denial of perspective, which is the fundamental condition of life. To talk about spirit and the good the way Plato did is, quite simply, to turn things on their head. Indeed, one might even ask, as a doctor might, how did this sickness infect that most refined product of antiquity, Plato? Was the mischievous Socrates really to blame for corrupting him? Was Socrates truly a corrupter of youth and deserved his hemlock? But the struggle against Plato, or to put it more plainly and in a way everyone can understand, the struggle against the oppressive grip of Christianity for thousands of years, since Christianity is, after all, just Platonism for the masses, created a tremendous tension in the European soul, a tension that had never existed before. With a bow wound that tightly, we can now aim for the farthest targets. In fact, the European feels this tension as a kind of distress. There have been two major attempts to release this tension, first through Jesuitism and then through democratic enlightenment. The latter, with the help of freedom of the press and a culture of constant news consumption, might actually have managed to make the spirit less prone to feeling this distress. But we, who are neither Jesuits nor Democrats, and not even really true Germans, us good Europeans, us free spirits, who are very free indeed, we still have all the distress of the spirit and all the tension of its bow. And maybe we even have the arrow. Chapter 1. On the Prejudices of Philosophers. Philosophers love to act as if they are seekers of truth, uncovering deep secrets about existence. But in reality, they often start with their own biases, desires, and beliefs. They aren't so different from everyone else. They just dress up their opinions in intellectual language. Many philosophers present their ideas as if they are purely objective. They claim to be guided solely by reason, but their thoughts often come from their personal experiences, emotions, or even physical needs. They create systems of thought based on what feels right to them, and then convince others that their philosophy is the truth. What a philosopher says is often more a confession of who they are than a discovery of universal truth. Their writings reflect their psychological state, upbringing, culture, and personal struggles. Their philosophies act like mirrors, revealing more about the philosopher than about the world. Some philosophers claim to be free spirits who think independently, but they often end up falling into narrow-minded thinking. They can be just as stubborn, close-minded, or fanatical as those they criticize. Their so-called free thinking is often just another form of bias. Many philosophers disguise their personal beliefs in moral language, presenting them as absolute truths. They preach what is good or bad without realizing that these are just reflections of their own desires and cultural upbringing. This is dangerous because it makes their personal opinions seem authoritative and universal. Behind every philosophical system is a will to power. This means that philosophers are not simply trying to find truth. They are trying to impose their vision of the world on others. Philosophy, therefore, is not just about understanding reality. It's about shaping it according to one's desires and values. We often assume that philosophers are purely motivated by a love of truth. But what if they are driven by something else? What if they are simply looking for ways to justify their own lives and beliefs? We need to question the deeper motives behind their search for truth. Despite their claims to open-mindedness, Philosophers can be the most dogmatic people of all. They cling to their theories and defend them as if they were sacred. True philosophy should be about questioning everything, including the philosopher's own biases and assumptions. Philosophy is not a detached, objective pursuit of knowledge. It is driven by deep personal needs, desires, and psychological impulses. Each philosopher brings their own unique perspective, shaped by their experiences and nature. This doesn't make philosophy less valuable. It just makes it more human. Chapter 2. The Free Spirit. What is a free spirit? It is not simply someone who thinks for themselves, beyond the constraints of tradition or popular opinion. To be truly free in spirit is to be unafraid of challenging even the most deeply held beliefs and convictions, including one's own. The kind of freedom is rare and difficult to achieve. It requires the courage to question everything, including what seems most obvious and true. People who consider themselves free thinkers often fall into new kinds of conformity. They reject one dogma only to fall into another. True free spirits are different. They embrace uncertainty and are constantly willing to revise their beliefs in the face of new evidence or deeper understanding. They are skeptical even of their skepticism. Free spirits are often misunderstood and isolated. They may appear strange or radical because they are not bound by conventional ideas or societal norms. They value their independence of thought above all else and are willing to stand alone, even in the face of ridicule or misunderstanding. They are explorers of the mind, venturing into territories others fear to tread. It takes a particular kind of strength and resilience to be a free spirit. Such a person is not content to simply accept what is given. Instead, they constantly push against boundaries, breaking through to new ways of seeing and understanding the world. They are relentless in their pursuit of wisdom, never resting on what they have already discovered. A free spirit recognizes that all beliefs, values, and truths are human creations. They understand that what is considered true or right is often a matter of perspective and power. This recognition can be both liberating and frightening. It means living without the comfort of absolute certainties, but it also opens up endless possibilities for growth and discovery. The journey of the free spirit is not an easy one. It is filled with doubts, fears, and the loneliness of standing apart from the crowd. But it is also a journey of incredible richness and depth. The free spirit lives fully, embracing both the light and the darkness, the known and the unknown. To be a free spirit is to be continually in motion, continually evolving. It is to see life as a constant process of becoming, rather than a state of being. The free spirit does not seek final answers or ultimate truths, but is always open to new questions and new possibilities. They know that wisdom is not found in fixed doctrines, but in the endless search for understanding. Free spirits are often seen as troublemakers or rebels, but this is because they disrupt the status quo. They challenge what others take for granted and are not afraid to confront uncomfortable truths. Their courage to think differently is a gift to humanity, pushing us all toward greater insight and self-awareness. The path of the free spirit is not for everyone. It requires a willingness to be misunderstood, a readiness to be alone, and a deep commitment to one's own inner journey. But for those who are called to it, there is no other way to live authentically. In the end, the free spirit is a reminder that life is not about finding easy answers or conforming to what is safe and familiar. It is about daring to think differently, to question deeply, and to live boldly in the face of uncertainty. This is the true essence of freedom. Chapter 3. The Religious Mood. Religious moods have always been significant in shaping human culture and thought. They come from a deep place within the human spirit and speak to our innermost needs and fears. To understand them, we must recognize their complexity. A religious mood is not just about belief in gods or divine beings. It's about how we confront the mysteries of life, death, and the unknown. Religious moods can be powerful and transformative. They often provide a sense of purpose and direction, helping people find meaning in their lives. However, they also have a dark side. When taken to extremes, they can lead to fanaticism, intolerance, and violence. The history of humanity is filled with examples of how religious fervor has both inspired great acts of kindness and justified horrific acts of cruelty. One of the challenges of the religious mood is that it tends to divide the world into absolutes, good and evil, right and wrong, sacred and profane. This dualistic thinking can create a rigid mindset, making it difficult to see the world in its complexity and nuance. It can limit our ability to grow and evolve, trapping us in a fixed way of thinking that resists change and new understanding. Yet, the religious mood is not inherently negative. It can also be a source of deep wisdom and insight. When approached with a spirit of openness and humility, it can help us explore the depths of our own souls and the mysteries of existence. It can push us to confront our deepest fears and desires, and to seek answers to the most profound questions about life and our place in the universe. The religious mood often arises in moments of crisis or profound reflection. It is a response to the overwhelming experience of being alive in a vast, mysterious world. It can come from a sense of awe and wonder, from the experience of beauty and transcendence, or from the fear of death and the unknown. It is deeply personal and yet also universal, touching on the core of what it means to be human. To understand the religious mood fully, we must see it as a part of the broader human experience. It is not something that exists apart from our everyday lives, but something that flows from the depths of our being. It can be found in the most ordinary moments as well as in the most extraordinary. It is a way of engaging with life that opens us to its mysteries and its potential for both joy and suffering. The challenge for modern thinkers is to navigate the religious mood without becoming trapped by it. We must learn to appreciate its insights and its power without falling into the traps of dogmatism or blind faith. This requires a balance of skepticism and openness, a willingness to question and to explore, while also recognizing the limits of our own understanding. The religious mood, at its best, can lead to a deeper connection with ourselves and with the world around us. It can help us see beyond the surface of things and touch on the profound mysteries that lie at the heart of existence. It can inspire us to live more fully and more deeply, to engage with life in all its complexity and wonder. At its worst, however, the religious mood can become a prison, locking us into narrow ways of thinking and being. It can close us off from new ideas and new experiences, trapping us in a cycle of fear and rigidity. The task, then, is to engage with the religious mood in a way that is both open and critical, embracing its potential for insight while guarding against its potential for harm. In the end, the religious mood is a reflection of the human condition itself. It is born from our desire to understand the world and our place in it, to find meaning in the face of uncertainty and chaos. It is a powerful force that can shape our lives in profound ways, for better or for worse. The key is to approach it with a spirit of curiosity and humility, always seeking deeper understanding and greater wisdom. Chapter 4. Apophthegms and Interludes. In all matters of love, we are at our most cowardly. Misunderstanding in love is often due to a lack of intellectual camaraderie. Whoever lives for others loses themselves. Noble people think that they are the standard and never ask for approval. When marrying, ask yourself, do I think this woman will be my friend in old age? Otherwise, the marriage will not last. A person seeks friends for different reasons, for conversation, for shared suffering, or for shared action. Our only goal is to find like-minded companions. A lie can save lives and end wars. The lie must have the value of truth, and sometimes it is needed to protect others. Too much cleverness in relationships usually means someone is being deceived. Sincere relationships are rarely crafted. Love can only exist between equals. Anything else is dependence or power play. No one is honest enough about their lack of honesty. We seek out art and illusion to make reality bearable. Often artists create their own new worlds to escape the harshness of life. In life's great challenges, one must act alone. Greatness requires solitude, while compromise leads to mediocrity. Philosophy can be seen as a tool to cope with life's complexities, but it is often just a self-deception to avoid facing reality. Art is for those who can't handle life's truths. It offers comfort where reality can be too harsh to face directly. Be wary of people who are always busy. They avoid themselves. Reflective time is necessary for personal growth and understanding. Friendship can be corrupted by excessive honesty. True friends may need some level of pretense to maintain harmony. To be oneself often means being misunderstood. Solitude is necessary for those who wish to preserve their unique selves. Chapter 5. The Natural History of Morality. Morality, like everything else, has its own history. A history deeply rooted in the human condition, shaped by various influences and evolving over time. Understanding morality requires us to look at it not as something fixed or absolute, but as something that has grown, transformed, and adapted according to the needs and circumstances of human life. Morality is fundamentally a human construct, arising from the necessities and experiences of living together in societies. It serves to regulate behavior, to define what is acceptable and what is not, and to maintain order and cohesion. However, what is considered moral can vary significantly across different cultures, times, and social structures. In its earliest form, morality was closely tied to the needs of survival and power. It was about ensuring the strength and continuity of a group, tribe, or community. Morals were designed to promote behaviors that would protect the group from external threats, ensure cooperation among its members, and maintain internal stability. The strongest and most successful groups were those that could instill a sense of loyalty, obedience, and solidarity among their members. As societies evolved, so did their moral codes. What was once seen as a straightforward matter of survival and power became more complex. With the rise of organized religion, morality took on a new dimension. It was no longer just about the practical needs of the community, but about divine commandments, sacred laws, and ultimate truths. Religion provided a new foundation for morality, offering not just rules for living, but also explanations for existence, suffering, and the afterlife. It introduced the ideas of sin, guilt, and redemption, which became central to moral thinking for centuries. Over time, however, the influence of religion on morality began to wane, especially in more modern, secular societies. People started to question the authority of religious dogma and began to seek alternative foundations for their moral beliefs. Philosophy, science, and humanism emerged as new sources of moral guidance. Morality became less about divine commands and more about human reason, empathy, and the pursuit of happiness and well-being. Yet, even in this modern context, morality is not fixed or universal. It continues to be shaped by social, economic, and political forces. What is considered moral in one society may be seen as immoral in another. For example, views on issues like gender roles, sexuality, or justice can vary dramatically from one culture to another, reflecting different histories, values, and experiences. This ongoing evolution of morality reflects a deeper truth, that morality is, at its core, a reflection of human needs, desires, and aspirations. It is shaped by our experiences, our fears, our hopes, and our understanding of the world. It is not something imposed from above or written in stone. It is something that grows and changes as we do. In recognizing this, we can approach morality with greater humility and openness. We can see it not as a rigid set of rules to be blindly followed, but as a dynamic, evolving process that must be continually examined, questioned, and revised. We can also see that there is room for diversity and difference in moral thinking, that what is right for one person or society may not be right for another. Ultimately, the natural history of morality teaches us that morality is a human project, one that is always in the making, always in flux, and always open to new possibilities. It invites us to be more reflective, more critical, and more compassionate in our moral judgments. And it reminds us that, in the end, the only true measure of morality is the extent to which it helps us to live better, more meaningful, and more fulfilling lives. Chapter 6. We Scholars. We scholars are a peculiar type. Our work demands a unique combination of qualities: a thirst for knowledge, a capacity for patience and solitude, and a willingness to dedicate our lives to understanding, questioning, and sometimes dismantling the truths that others take for granted. But in this pursuit, we must also examine ourselves, our motives, our assumptions, and our biases. To be a scholar is not simply to amass facts and data. It is to engage in a deep and continuous process of thought, to weigh evidence, to explore contradictions, and to confront the unknown. The true scholar is always pushing the boundaries of understanding, always questioning even the most fundamental beliefs. But this quest for knowledge is not a neutral activity. It is influenced by who we are, where we come from, and what we seek to find. Most scholars, especially those of us steeped in the academic traditions of the West, have inherited a certain set of values. We value objectivity, rationality, and detachment. We believe that by stepping back from our personal biases and emotional entanglements, we can see more clearly, think more deeply, and arrive at more reliable conclusions. But is this really possible? Is there such a thing as true objectivity, or are we always in some way shaped by our perspectives, our experiences, and our desires? There is a danger, too, in becoming too detached. We scholars often pride ourselves on our independence, on our ability to stand apart from the world, to observe it from a distance, like a scientist peering through a microscope. But in doing so, we can become disconnected from the very life we seek to understand. We can become trapped in our ivory towers, isolated from the messiness and complexity of real human experience. We can forget that knowledge is not just about seeing, but also about feeling, not just about understanding, but also about engaging with the world in a meaningful way. This detachment can lead to a certain coldness, a certain lack of empathy. We can become so focused on our theories and abstractions that we lose sight of the human beings behind the data. We can become so concerned with being right that we forget what it means to be kind, to be compassionate, to be truly humane. In our quest for knowledge, we must remember that we are not just minds, but also hearts and souls. Moreover, our work as scholars is never truly finished. Knowledge is infinite, and the more we learn, the more we realize how little we actually know. Each new discovery opens up new questions, new uncertainties, new possibilities. The pursuit of truth is not a destination but a journey that requires humility, curiosity, and a willingness to be wrong. It requires us to be constantly learning, constantly growing, constantly challenging ourselves and our assumptions. We must also be aware of the power dynamics at play in the world of scholarship. Who gets to decide what counts as knowledge? Whose voices are heard and whose are silenced? What biases and prejudices shape our academic institutions, our fields of study, and our methods of inquiry? As scholars, we have a responsibility to examine not only the world around us, but also the structures and systems that shape our own work. We must be willing to challenge not only others' beliefs, but also our own. In the end, being a scholar is not about having all the answers, but about asking the right questions. It is about being willing to explore the unknown, to venture into new territories, to take risks, and to embrace uncertainty. It is about being open to new ideas, new perspectives, new ways of thinking and being. We scholars must strive to be not just intelligent but wise, not just knowledgeable but thoughtful, not just critical but compassionate. We must seek to understand the world not just with our minds, but with our whole beings. And we must always remember that the true goal of scholarship is not simply to know, but to learn how to live more deeply, more fully, more authentically. Chapter 7. Our Virtues. Today we, the free spirits, most often mistakenly referred to as free thinkers, are misunderstood, even though we are, in fact, rare and distinctive. We lack any kind of shared, uniform virtues that one could label as our virtues. Our paths, as diverse and winding as they may be, have led us away from conventional morality. We have set out to chart a new course and cultivate our own virtues, those that come from within, not from tradition or dogma. For us, virtues are not ready-made, nor are they imposed upon us by an external authority. We create our virtues, as one might craft a work of art. And just as artists differ in their styles and methods, we too differ in how we shape our lives and our values. Our virtues are not meant to conform. They are not intended to be universal. Each of us, in our independence, develops them as we see fit, based on our unique experiences and perspectives. But let us not be misunderstood. We are not without direction or purpose. We are not mere wanderers without a cause. Our quest is not for the absence of virtues, but for the discovery of new ones. We wish to explore what lies beyond the virtues that have long been celebrated and propagated by society. We want to know, what are the virtues of a future humanity? What are the virtues of a freer, more enlightened age? It is essential to understand that the virtues of the past were born out of the needs and conditions of their times. They served specific purposes, fulfilled particular roles in the societies that fostered them. Courage, loyalty, humility, patience. These virtues were not timeless truths, but responses to the challenges of their eras. What is considered virtuous today may not hold the same value tomorrow, for virtues, like all things, evolve and change. And we, the free spirits, are the ones who must venture forth into this new territory, who must ask the bold questions. What virtues are necessary for the human beings of the future? What qualities will help us navigate the complexities of modern life? What values will allow us to thrive, not merely survive, in a world that is constantly shifting and evolving? We know well that to embark on such a journey requires courage. It takes a willingness to confront the unknown, to question the unquestionable, to step outside the comfort of the familiar. It demands resilience, for the path of the free spirit is often lonely and fraught with difficulty. It requires the ability to adapt, to change, to grow. It calls for a strength of will that refuses to be subdued by fear or doubt. Our virtues, therefore, are not static, but dynamic. They are not rigid, but flexible. They are not given, but earned. Through struggle, through reflection, through a relentless quest for truth. They are born not from dogma, but from discovery, not from conformity, but from creativity. They are the virtues of explorers, of pioneers, of those who refuse to settle for what is, but instead strive for what could be. We recognize that this endeavor is not for everyone. Many would prefer the safety and security of established virtues, the comfort of well-worn paths, and that is fine. But for those of us who feel called to explore new horizons, who feel a restless urge to seek out what lies beyond the known, this is our task, our mission, our challenge. We are the ones who must ask, what does it mean to live a good life in a world that is constantly changing? What does it mean to be virtuous in a world that is becoming ever more complex, ever more interconnected, ever more unpredictable? What does it mean to be truly free? Our virtues will not be like those of the past. They will not be built on obedience or submission, on conformity or control. They will be virtues of independence, of courage, of curiosity. They will be virtues of resilience, of adaptability, of openness to the new and the unknown. They will be virtues of honesty, not just with others, but with ourselves. They will be virtues that embrace the fullness of human experience in all its complexity and contradiction. And they will be our virtues, ours to define, ours to live by, ours to evolve as we continue on our journey of discovery and growth. Chapter 8. Peoples and Countries. I recently heard Richard Wagner's overture to the Master Singers for what felt like the first time again. It's a powerful, rich, and complex piece of modern music that seems to carry within it the pride of assuming that 2 centuries of musical tradition are still alive to understand it. It's an honor to Germans that such pride wasn't mistaken. The piece is a mix of flavors and forces, different seasons and climates. At times, it feels ancient, at other times, foreign, bitter, or even too modern. It is both random and pompously traditional, sometimes playful, often rough and coarse. It carries fire and courage, but also the overripe feel of fruit that has matured too long. It flows broadly and fully. Then suddenly there's an inexplicable pause, like a gap between cause and effect, an oppression that almost feels like a nightmare. But then it flows broadly again, bringing with it the old stream of joy, a diverse joy, both old and new, filled with the artist's own pleasure in himself and his mastery of new, untested artistic techniques. However, there is no beauty here, no southern clarity of the sky, no grace, no dance, hardly any will to logic. There is even a certain clumsiness that seems to be emphasized intentionally, as if the artist were saying, "This is part of my intention." There is something cumbersome, something arbitrarily barbaric and ceremonious, an intertwining of learned and venerable concepts and witticisms. It's something deeply German in both the best and worst sense, diverse, formless, inexhaustible, with a certain German potency and overabundance of soul that does not hesitate to hide itself beneath the refinements of decadence. This is perhaps where it feels most at ease, a real, genuine sign of the German soul that is simultaneously young and old, overripe, yet still too full of potential. This kind of music best expresses what I think of the Germans. They belong to the day before yesterday and the day after tomorrow. They have no today. We good Europeans, we too have moments when we allow ourselves a bit of warm-hearted patriotism, a plunge back into old loves and narrow viewpoints. I've just provided an example of this, moments of national excitement, of patriotic anguish, and other sorts of old-fashioned sentimental floods. Duller minds might take much longer to get through what confines its operations to mere hours in us. They might need half a year, others half a lifetime, depending on how quickly they can digest and transform their material. I can even imagine sluggish, hesitant nations that would require half a century to overcome such atavistic attacks of patriotism and soil attachment and return to reason, to good Europeanism. While thinking about this possibility, I overheard a conversation between two old patriots. They were both quite hard of hearing and, as a result, spoke even louder. "He has as much philosophy as a peasant or a university student," one said. "He's still innocent. But what does that matter today? It's the age of the masses. They grovel before everything that's massive. And so, too, in politics. A statesman who builds for them a new Tower of Babel, some monstrosity of empire and power. They call him great. What does it matter that we more prudent and conservative ones don't give up the old belief that it's only great thoughts that make actions or endeavors great? What if a statesman were to put his people in a position where they are compelled to engage in high politics, for which they are naturally ill-suited and unprepared, forcing them to give up their old and reliable virtues for a new and doubtful mediocrity? What if he condemns his people to practice politics when they've had better things to do and think about, and deep down have never been able to shake off a prudent disgust for the restlessness, emptiness, and noisy wrangling of the inherently politics-practicing nations? What if such a statesman stirs up the dormant passions and desires of his people, turning their former reluctance and love for distance into a stigma and an offense, belittling their deepest tendencies, undermining their conscience, narrowing their minds, and making their tastes national? Such a statesman would be great, would he not? "Undoubtedly," replied the other old patriot fervently. "Otherwise he couldn't have done it. It was madness, perhaps, to want such a thing. But maybe everything great has been just as mad at its beginning." "Misuse of words!" shouted his interlocutor in contradiction. "Strong, strong, strong and mad, not great." The old men were clearly heated, shouting their truths at each other, but I, in my happiness and detachment, considered how soon a stronger one could become the master of the strong, and that there is a compensation for the intellectual simplification of a nation in the deepening of another. Whether we call it civilization, humanization, or progress, that now distinguishes the European, whether we simply call it without praise or blame, the political formula, the democratic movement in Europe, behind all these moral and political foregrounds indicated by such formulas, a vast physiological process is taking place, one that is constantly expanding, the process of the assimilation of Europeans. They are becoming increasingly detached from the conditions under which, through climate and heredity, united races or types arise. They are becoming increasingly independent of any particular environment that for centuries would have liked to impose itself equally on soul and body. In other words, the slow emergence of an essentially supranational and nomadic type of person who, from a physiological standpoint, is characterized by a maximum capacity for adaptation. This process of evolving the European can be slowed down by major setbacks, but it will perhaps gain and grow deeper as a result. The still raging storm and stress of national sentiment pertain to it, as does the current appearance of anarchism. This process will likely lead to results that its naive propagators and promoters, the apostles of modern ideas, would least expect. The same new conditions under which, on average, a leveling and mediocratization of humanity will occur, creating a useful, industrious, versatile, and clever herd animal, are highly conducive to the emergence of exceptional individuals with the most dangerous and attractive qualities. While the capacity for adaptation, which is continuously tested by changing conditions and begins a new task with every generation, almost with every decade, makes the strength of the type impossible, while the collective impression of these future Europeans will likely be that of numerous, talkative, weak-willed, and highly capable workmen who need a master, a commander, as much as they need their daily bread, while therefore the democratization of Europe will tend toward creating a type ready for subtle slavery in every sense of the word. The strong individual will inevitably become stronger and richer than ever before, thanks to the lack of bias in his education, thanks to the vast variety of practice, skill, and disguise. What I mean to say is that the democratization of Europe is simultaneously an unintentional arrangement for breeding tyrants, in every sense of the word, even the most spiritual. I am pleased to hear that our sun is moving swiftly toward the constellation Hercules. I hope that people on this earth will do as the sun does. And we, first of all, we good Europeans. Chapter 9. What is noble? Every rise of the type man has been the work of an aristocratic society, and will always be so. A society that believes in a long series of gradations of rank and worth among people, and that needs slavery in one form or another. Without the pathos of distance, which grows from the embodiment of differences between classes, from the constant looking down and looking up of a ruling caste on their subordinates and tools, from their equally constant practice of commanding and obeying, of holding down and holding at a distance, that other more mysterious pathos could never have arisen. The longing for an ever wider widening of distance within the soul itself, the formation of ever higher, rarer, more extended, more comprehensive states. In short, just the elevation of the type man, the continual self-overcoming of man. To use a moral formula in a supra-moral sense. To be honest, we must admit that every higher culture has grown from a soil soaked in blood. A truth that must be acknowledged impartially, is that every aristocratic society has sprung from a combination of barbaric elements, strong, still primitive men, predators in every sense of the word. These men, still possessing an unbroken will to power, threw themselves upon weaker, more moral, more peaceful, perhaps trade-oriented or cattle-raising communities. Or they fell upon old and mellow civilizations where the last remnants of vitality were flickering out in stunning displays of wit and depravity. At the start, the noble class was always the barbarian class. Their superiority lay not primarily in their physical abilities, but in their psychological strength. They were fuller human beings, which in every respect means the same as more complete beasts. Corruption as a sign that anarchy threatens to break out among the instincts, and that the foundations of emotion we call life are convulsed, varies radically depending on the organization where it manifests. When an aristocracy, like that of France at the start of the Revolution, threw away its privileges with sublime disgust and sacrificed itself to an excess of its moral sentiments, it was corruption. It was merely the closing act of a decay that had been going on for centuries, where that aristocracy had gradually abdicated its ruling prerogatives and lowered itself to a mere function of royalty, ultimately even becoming a mere decoration for it. The essential thing, however, in a good and healthy aristocracy, is that it does not regard itself as a function of the monarchy or the commonwealth, but rather as the meaning and highest justification of them. Therefore, it must accept with good conscience the sacrifice of a legion of individuals who must be oppressed and reduced to incomplete human beings, to slaves and instruments. Its fundamental belief must be that society does not exist for its own sake, but as a foundation and scaffold by which a select class of beings may elevate themselves to their higher duties, and generally to a higher existence. To refrain mutually from injury, violence, exploitation, and to place one's will on a par with that of others. This can, in a rough sense, result in good conduct among individuals where the necessary conditions are present, actual equality in force and worth, and a relation of correlation within one organization. However, if one wished to take this principle more broadly, as the fundamental principle of society, it would immediately show what it really is: a will to deny life, a principle of dissolution and decay. Life itself is essentially appropriation, injury, conquest of what is foreign and weak, suppression, harshness, imposition of peculiar forms, incorporation, and, at the very least, exploitation. Yet why should one always use precisely these words, upon which for ages a disparaging purpose has been stamped? Exploitation does not pertain to a depraved, imperfect society. It belongs to the fundamental nature of every living being as a basic organic function, an outcome of the intrinsic will to power, which is itself the will to life. There are two main types of morality: master morality and slave morality. In all higher and mixed civilizations, attempts at reconciling these two moralities can be found, though one more often encounters confusion and mutual misunderstanding between them. Master morality originates among the ruling class, who are pleasantly aware of their difference from the ruled. They set the concepts of good as synonymous with what is noble, exalted, and proud, and bad as the opposite, what is low, cowardly, timid, insignificant. The noble person regards themselves as the value determiner. They do not require approval. They judge what harms me is harmful in itself, and they know that they alone confer honor on things. This type of morality is a glorification of oneself. Slave morality, however, arises among the oppressed, suffering, powerless, and insecure. It is more pessimistic and condemning. The qualities that help endure the burden of existence, like patience, humility, and friendliness, are highlighted and honored here. Slave morality is essentially about utility. It creates the famous contrast between good and evil, where good is associated with safety, kindness, and utility, while evil refers to power, danger, and dominance. There is an instinct for rank, which is already the sign of a high rank. It is a delight in the subtleties of reverence that suggests noble origin and habits. A refined and lofty soul is tested by its instinct for reverence, especially when it encounters what is of the highest rank, but not yet protected by authority from intrusive touches and rudeness. This instinct reveals an innate order of rank within the soul. In conclusion, what defines the noble? Not their actions, for these are always ambiguous, but rather their belief, a fundamental certainty that the noble soul has about itself. This certainty is not sought, found, or lost. It is the inherent reverence a noble soul has for itself. As we close this exploration of beyond good and evil, we find ourselves standing at the edge of what we thought we knew. Nietzsche's philosophy doesn't offer us a resting place. It gives us a starting point, a launching pad to question everything and accept nothing without scrutiny. This journey is not about arriving at a final truth. It's about forever moving beyond the horizon of our current beliefs, constantly evolving, growing, and redefining what it means to be human. By translating Nietzsche's challenging ideas into a language that speaks to the 21st century, I hope to have brought his provocations closer to the world we live in now. But the real work is up to you, the reader, the thinker, the seeker. Nietzsche's call is not for passive consumption, but for active engagement with life's most fundamental questions. Who are you without your inherited beliefs? What values are truly your own, forged in the fire of your experience and reflection? The journey doesn't end with this book. It begins anew with every moment you choose to challenge the status quo, to step beyond the easy comforts of conformity, and to carve out your own unique path. Remember, the true adventure lies not in finding answers, but in embracing the questions that propel us forward, beyond the simple, beyond the safe, and beyond good and evil.